All right, guys, Stephen Cox here, and today we're going to play a little bit of U-bass and just kind of have some fun. So I thought it might be kind of fun to play through some holiday music. I didn't really plan anything out, so we'll just have to see how this goes. But I want to mention I'm also going to record this on a separate camera on my phone so that hopefully I'll have better audio when I repost it and better video when I repost it. So I know that a lot of times the audio and the video are a little bit iffy on here due to my internet connection, but hopefully this will help. All right, so first thing I want to talk about is a lot of you guys are playing Feliz Navidad in groups or with ukulele players. So I just wanted to talk about kind of how I'd make a line for that and what elements I'm using. I'm going to make a full video on this later, but I thought it'd be kind of cool to just start with that a little bit. So normally when you're playing with ukulele players, you'll probably be playing Feliz Navidad in C, but we can talk about how to play it in C and in D. Okay, so if we play it in C, then we will be starting really on an F chord, which is kind of interesting. So this is a bass line that's not in the original recording, but like I said, if you're playing with ukulele players, this would work with them, especially if they're playing in the key of C. We can talk about how to move it to the original key of D as well. So Feliz Navidad in the key of C starts on the F chord, moves to the G chord, and then goes to a C chord. And does that for the C chord for 2 measures in the verse. It does something a little bit different in the chorus. So let's see. Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Prospero año y felicidad. So you get that idea? And then you kind of have a stop at the end. So normally if you're playing with ukulele players, let me see if I have a ukulele handy. I think I have my double neck. I'm gonna grab that real quick. Don't mind me. I may need to tune it real quick, but this might be a better thing to teach this on so that I can go back and forth between the ukulele and the bass part. So, well, this one's easier to tune. Let me do this. So basically, the ukulele would be playing. Ooh, I lied. There's no battery in this one. All right. Well, that makes it a little trickier. It's not great, but it's close enough. So a ukulele part might be the island strum pattern that sounds like this. It's like Cynthia Lynn and other people like that put ukulele videos out like that, where they're playing the chords that way. So the bass line that I was playing a minute ago works with that. Boom, 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 boom. So it's that kind of thing over it, but that's what they're playing. So what I'm doing is arpeggiating the chords, which if you don't know what that means, we'll talk about in a second. And then after I'm playing those arpeggios, then I play root and fifth sometimes. Sometimes I leave notes out of the arpeggios and just kind of go back and forth between a couple different ways to make a bass line. But the reason I'm mentioning the ukulele and why I pulled that out for a second was because I have a video already out called Creating Bass Lines Around Island Strum. I think it's called Island Strum Bass Lines or something. And one of them is this arpeggio that I'm using here. And then going to another one, there's a root fifth bass line, like a country line. So what I'm doing is sort of combining them, but not in like a country fashion. So on the F chord, I'm doing the arpeggio, which is the root, the third, and the fifth of the chord. We'll talk about it more in a second. And then when I go to a G, I'm just playing G and D, which is the root of the chord, which is G, and the fifth of the chord, that's D. And then on C, I kind of go back to the arpeggio. So you could just play arpeggios the whole way. So you could just go F chord, G, C, and another C, and then back to F, and it keeps going just around that little cycle. Only there are stops occasionally on the second C chord. But I like to vary it up a little bit and to stay low rather than going high as this note, because that's a little bit in more like the, maybe even the ukulele range. So I like to stay low, and in order to do that, I play lower notes. So instead of playing this D, you could play this D right here. And you could even play the B down low. But I instead just do a root and a fifth and change the rhythm slightly. So let me just play through it and kind of explain it after the fact. The F chord to the G to C. So F's an arpeggio, G, I'm doing some sort of root fifth thing, or I'm really going root, fifth, root. And then I go back to a C after that. All right. May have to get this person, tell a person to stop messaging on Facebook in a minute. But the arpeggio, I'm playing with a rhythm that's kind of goes along with island strum well. It's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and it's called a 1-bar clave. And I taught that rhythm in the Island Strum Basslines video, but that's kind of what I'm doing here. So I'm using that rhythm for all the chords, but on the first one I'm doing the arpeggio, root, third, fifth. On the second one I'm going root, fifth, root, and then on the last one back to root, third, fifth, root, third, fifth. So that's what you can do for the verses. Now, the only difference on the chorus is technically it goes F to G to C and then to A minor. So it replaces the second C chord with an A minor chord. A lot of times the ukulele arrangements don't have it changing chord there. And really all we have to do to change the chord is to change the root by playing an A ourselves. And they can keep playing a C chord and it becomes an A minor 7 chord. But we don't need to worry about the theory of why. We just know that this is what we could do for the chorus. So when it gets to the I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, that part, then you're going to be doing, let's see, the F, G, C, A minor. So, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. Want to wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. And then you can do a stop and go back to either the verse or do another chorus again. So what I was doing there was still the arpeggio on the F, that root, fifth root thing on the G chord, then arpeggio on the C chord, and then I went up to this A. You could go to the open A instead, but I went to this A, which is the second fret on the G string, and then I did the root, fifth root thing there. So F chord once again, root, third, fifth, G, root, fifth, root, C, arpeggio, and then A, fifth, and then back to the root. So now that I've kind of explained what I'm doing, or the why I'm playing those things and what they are music theory wise, for the beginners, I'm just going to explain it a little simpler. So we're just going to do the fret numbers and the strings. So starting this bass line, we do the 3rd fret on the D string, 2nd fret on the G string, and the 5th fret on the G string. Then we'll go to the 5th fret on the D string, 5th fret on the A string, back to 5th fret on the D string. And once again, we're doing it with that kind of islandy sort of rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. So that's as far as we are right now. Then we'll go to the 3rd fret on the A string, 2nd fret on the D string, and 5th fret on the D string. And if we were doing the verse, we do that C chord again. So we do 3rd fret on the A string again, 2nd fret on the D string, and 5th fret on the D string again. So this is that whole pattern again. And that's the verse. And then for the chorus, once it gets to the I Want to Wish You a Merry Christmas part, you're going to do basically the same thing. 3rd fret on the D string, 2nd fret on the G string, 5th fret on the G string. Then we're going to go to the 5th fret on the D string, 5th fret on the A string, back to 5th fret on the D string. Then we're going to go to 3rd fret on the A string, 2nd fret on the D string, 5th fret on the D string. And then I like to go to the 2nd fret of the G string, down to the 2nd fret of the D string. So the G string, then to the D string. So we've got those last 3 notes. 2nd fret on the G string, 2nd fret on the D string, and back to 2nd fret on the G string. So I'm going to play the chorus back to back. Then it repeats. Only this time, if we're at the end of the chorus, we just stop on a C instead of playing that 2nd A to lead us back into the verse. So that's the basic idea on Feliz Navidad, but I think we should probably play through it. So I'm going to try to sing and play it. We'll see what happens. So for the intro, I'm just going to go around the verse changes with the stop one time. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, prospero año y felicidad. Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, prospero año y felicidad. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. And then if you're doing the Cynthia Lynn version, you could add the cha-cha-cha on the 3rd fret on the A string. Cha-cha-cha. Okay, so those are the only 2 parts of the song. You can repeat them kind of however many times you want to, or as many times as the ukulele player you're playing with wants to play it. And that's kind of it for that. So I'm going to try to get to a question on here. Let's see what's going on. What would be the best U bass for someone who already plays electric bass and is just getting one for fun, preferably on the cheaper side? Okay, so it depends. Do you want something that feels more like the electric bass? Because then you probably want to get one that has round wound strings or flat wound strings installed on it. So this one has flat wound strings. These are metal strings wrapped around a nylon core. And they react a little bit more like electric bass strings. And it's not as big of an adjustment as the polyurethane strings. However, it sounds a little bit more like an electric bass. So if you were getting the U-bass more for the sort of upright-esque sound, then you may want to get one with the polyurethane strings. And this one's called the Wanderer. It's the Kala Wanderer. It's fairly affordable. Kala has another one called the Nomad that basically replaced this one. So this one now comes with metal strings, but the Nomad comes with the polyurethane strings. So if you're wanting one that feels more like an electric bass, but it has kind of noisy strings, like think of an acoustic, like when you're moving your acoustic guitar, when you're moving your hand across the strings, how they kind of go make a sh kind of sound. That noise gets amplified by this kind of pickup. So those strings are very clicky. These strings have like a stickiness to them and also have a good bit of string noise, but it's a little bit different. So if you want to have the least amount of string noise, you'll have to get flat wound strings after the fact and put them on one of these. But if you're just looking for an inexpensive thing that's like an electric bass, you'd probably want to go for one like the current Wanderer. They used to come with polyurethane strings, but now they come with the metal round wound strings, which are like normal, kind of like normal bass strings. Those will be the smallest adjustment from playing, but like I said, because they have a piezo pickup, you'll have to get used to how noisy they are. And if you want something that sounds a little more like an upright, the Nomad has the polyurethane strings, but they take some getting used to because they're a lot looser than the metal strings, and you have to play lightly so your fingers don't stick on them. And it's just something that takes a little while to get used to for most people. But they have the classic U-bass sound. So that's what I would do if you're looking for an inexpensive one. The Journeyman isn't really that expensive either. And then there are companies like Hadean and Hadean, and that company makes cheaper ones that are sometimes good, but their quality control's not quite as good as Kala's. So you might get a really good one, might get a mediocre one, where there are little issues with it that you have to figure out. So that's about it for that. So great question. Those are ones that are a little bit on the cheaper side. There's several companies, like Hadean that make cheaper ones now. And all those brands are on Amazon, and most of them are pretty good, although you might have to do some sort of truss rod adjustment or something to get certain notes not to buzz. That's another thing. You play a lot lighter on the polyurethane strings because they vibrate wider. And when they vibrate wider, they might get some fret buzz just from you playing too hard. So just remember, you can also play lightly, and that'll solve most of those problems. But if the strings are too low, you might still have a buzz, especially on the cheaper instruments. Hopefully that helped. That was a great question. And then Peter said, do you think studying the U-bass fretboard and baritone ukulele fretboard at the same time is too much for a beginner? I think it's different for different people, right? Some people are really good at separating things and kind of thinking about them differently. It's kind of like, I guess that's sort of like learning two languages at the same time, so it might be a little bit much, but they're related languages, so it's kind of like learning two Latin-based languages at the same time, like maybe Italian and Spanish or something. So if it's something where you'd like to draw comparisons between them, really what you're learning there, actually, I'll just say this, you can connect the two a little bit. So the baritone ukulele is a lot like the thinner four strings of the guitar. The bass has the same names as the thicker four strings of the guitar, so they overlap, right? So as long as you know that overlap is there and you can keep it straight in your mind and not think, oh, there's a D and a G string and they're here on the baritone, but on the bass they're here. So as long as you don't get confused about which string is which, or start thinking like a baritone player on the U-bass, I think you'll be okay. But one thing that you could do is just kind of see how they overlap with the guitar. So I have a guitar here handy, quite convenient that it was just there. So it's an octave higher, but on the bass I'm playing E, A, D, G On the guitar, this is E, A, D, G. And on a baritone ukulele, if I'm not mistaken, you've got D, G, B, E, right? Which are the same as the open thinner strings on the guitar. So if you look at that, E and A on the bass, the baritone ukulele won't have. And for the bass, it's the B and the E string, the thinner strings, that the bass guitar wouldn't have. So if you kind of get that overlap of how they all relate to a guitar, I think it could help you memorize the neck a little bit. And then you're also memorizing a guitar neck too by getting that connection. However, because the D and the G string are the thinner strings on here and they're the thicker strings on a baritone ukulele, I do think that might be a little bit confusing. So you just have to consciously remember that every time when you're doing that. But the other thing is, if you're trying to just memorize the fretboard, just know how to count up, understand your whole steps and half steps, and then it doesn't really matter, you know, if you're playing things. You just go off of what the open string is and kind of count up from there. So no, I don't think it's too much for a beginner. I do think it'll take a little bit more time if you do it that way, but it depends on your learning style is really what it is, and how overwhelmed you feel. If you feel overwhelmed, just stick to one. And then Terry's book and Bible review says, I just got a Nomad. It takes getting used to. And you're used to a 6-string electric bass. Okay. Yeah, so that is different. Yeah. So I had a couple of 6 strings. Now I just have one, and it's got some issues. I need to fix that one. But yeah, the main getting used to is just that the strings give a lot more and your fingers kind of stick to them. So you have to alter your technique a little bit with that. And the other thing is, depending on what method you learned on bass, on the electric bass, you might have your hands more crammed together to be more comfortable rather than doing one finger per fret way down here and stretching them out. But that also depends. Like if you have bigger hands than mine, then you might not be doing that. You might be doing one finger per fret anyway. But there are a lot of things that I learned that translate to upright. And with upright, you kind of use these 2 fingers together, and the ring finger and the pinky almost like they're one finger. And then you have the index and the middle finger separate, and your positions are kind of based on that. So if you're approaching an electric bass like that, then the U bass, you won't be able to cram your fingers quite as closely as you go up the fretboard. So you'll have to alter things. So for me, I learned Donna Lee on an electric bass thinking sort of like an upright bass player. So I was playing like middle finger going to pinky, and then pinky, middle, index, and all these other things. And on the U bass, it's too much. So I had to like relearn that with these 3 fingers to be able to play Donna Lee on the U bass. It's almost like I had to relearn the muscle memory, if that makes sense. Okay, but yeah, those are great questions and great comments. So kind of back to holiday music. With Feliz Navidad, I think it was just a good example of how you can, if you're playing with ukulele players and they're just doing a bunch of island strum songs, you can kind of change it up. So you have like root, third, fifth kind of things. Then you have your root fifth lines. And root fifth lines work well for things like Jingle Bells and Rudolph and Frosty the Snowman and all those kinds of things. And the arpeggio line works better for things like Feliz Navidad. Although the original bass line for Feliz Navidad was nothing like that, I just think that what the original bass line does works best if you have a drummer in the band too, and most of these ukulele groups don't. So that's why I'm doing this arpeggio thing. And I think the original is more like, it's busier, and I almost feel like that busyness, in order to lock in with the uke group, you have to be a tighter player, and then if there's no percussive thing making that make sense, it's too much of a driving rhythm, I think, for the group when they're doing their own driving rhythm of dun da dun da 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 da, right? Okay, so Leah says, you're right about the strings of the baritone and the bass. I play both. The notes for baritone are in the G key, whereas the notes for the bass are in the F key. Oh, are you talking about the, are you talking about the clefs? Are you talking about the G clef and the F clef when you're reading notes? So yeah, it depends on, you might be talking about reading music with there rather than just learning the notes on the neck. So I'm not sure if that's what you're getting at, but I think that's what you're saying, because the treble clef's the G clef and the bass clef is the F clef. So I think that's what you mean. If not, then I'd love for you to elaborate, but I'm not sure. Okay, so back to some holiday music. Creating, okay, the clefs, thank you. So creating like a bass line around like Jingle Bells. You know, you got the dash. So you got that, so you probably have like a, it depends on what key you're playing it in. Dashing through the snow, that's your one chord. One horse open sleigh, that's your 4 chord. So that's a C chord going to an F chord. O'er the hills we go, and that's a G chord when it gets the word go. Laughing all the way. This is not a good singing key for me. I don't know why I picked the key of C. Oh yeah, I do. Ukuleles, right. So you have a C, an F, a G, and I think it goes back to C then. So we got then that's back to C, and it does the same kind of thing, and almost until the end of that line. So you could play a root fifth line. Dashing through the snow in a one horse open sleigh, over the fields we go, laughing all the way, right? So you could literally just play a root fifth line all the way through that one by just having the chord chart in front of you and knowing where it changes over what word, and that will get you through pretty much the whole song. One thing you may want to add is like a walk down or a walk up here and there. I think the walk down kind of goes good into certain parts of the song. Let's see which ones. So we have our C chord first. Dashing through the snow in a one horse open sleigh, o'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. I don't like it there. Bells on bobtails ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. Oh, I wouldn't do it there either, unless you want to do it on the oh. But you don't really have enough time to. So yeah, that one's not a good example of throwing that of that walk down. But there's a walk down that happens in a lot of Christmas songs. So Jingle Bells works really well to just be a root fifth kind of line and occasionally doing small walks between the chord. You could do that kind of thing and just give it like a country kind of bass line. I wouldn't do the arpeggio thing unless you're playing with a drummer and that drummer decides to give it a totally different style and a different feel than the original piece. And then you might be able to do that little like arpeggio line. Boom, dum, dum, boom. So you might be able to do something more like that. But anyway, a root fifth line works good for a lot of different holiday songs. Then there's songs like Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph that have like a slow section at the beginning and then they come in with something else. And sometimes it's the bass that leads you in. So like, let's say, I'd have to pull up the chords for those. I don't have those memorized, believe it or not. Let's see. So let's take Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer first. So we got Rudolph chords in C. Let's see if I can find it. Does it start at the beginning? Yes, it does. So at the beginning, if it's in C, let's see. Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. And then it's like the but do you recall the most famous reindeer of all? Okay. Rudolph, Rudolph. Okay, I just had to figure out where it is in there. You know Dash. So there it is. You know Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. But do you recall the most famous reindeer of all? Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. So you kind of hear that little walk down I did. That's a walk down from G to C, because you end on a G chord, and you're literally just walking down the C major scale. So if you know the C major scale, you're starting on G within the scale and just walking backwards until you get to C. And typically it's either starting on the upbeat with the G, ba-dum, bum, bum, or it's 2 Gs, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. So that's a good way to get from these slow sections of the song into the part that has a straight up tempo. That's not as whatchamacallit, not as rubato, I guess is the word, where it's a loose time feel that kind of moves. So so on that beginning part, let's see. Yeah, oh, it's just doing the arpeggios. Okay, sorry, I'm just like learning the melody as we're going. I know it's a little bit of a waste of time. Hold on one second. So I know that